So, same day. This video is going to be about anti-Blackness. Because a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is going to sound preachy. Um, hey, um, but in order to in order to show you that I'm not judging people who haven't done this yet. Or haven't um, I don't know, haven't realized just what society has taught um, everyone about going with the flow and going with society standards and just accepting the way things are. Um, Everybody who hasn't realized that that's never going to lead to any kind of equality or reciprocity. Um, this is for you. I am not a all-knowing being. Um, and I've gone through a lot of shit myself, and I continue to go through a lot of shit right now. I'm still unlearning a lot of what society has taught. Um, Especially since there's so much to unlearn. There's so much to unlearn. It's just so the minute you were born, you are indoctrinated with all of these society ideas about um who you are, most importantly, um, and how that will affect the way that you live your life. And people with power, mainly white people, um, they are taught that they're the only ones that are important, and they don't have to deal with the things that people who are oppressed, women, trans people, black people, anyone that isn't a white man, white cis man, to be completely like on point. Anyone that isn't that will have to deal with a lot more. So they don't know. They don't know how we go through our lives. They don't know how many systems are in place to keep us oppressed. Um, and there's a lot of people who are oppressed that still don't know um, how to change that, how to elevate themselves, and instead they decide to play respectability politics, which has been a trope passed down, that if you're respectable, then people respect you. That if you try to be as close to the white standard as possible, then you won't be oppressed anymore. But that's not the case. It doesn't really matter how much you adhere to society standards of what is good, of what is respectable. No matter how much you adhere to that, it's not going to change anything. Um, they'll still look at you. If you're black, they'll still say like that's a black person. They're not they're not on my level. They don't deserve as much as me. They don't have a hard time, but they don't deserve as much as me, which I never really understood. But hey, um, I personally used to be anti-black. I used to be very racist. I was just racist. I'm black, but I was racist. I am Dominican. I grew up in a mainly Dominican household. My grandmother and my mother are Puerto Rican as well. But in the, I'm just going to say it, in the Hispanic community, there is a lot of anti-blackness, because everybody's trying to pull themselves up by pushing somebody down. Everyone. Um, because that's the way that white supremacy works. Um, they want infighting. They want you to be so busy fighting each other that you don't see that you're in a bigger, that there's another layer to this, that the white people, um, and the people that adhere closer to society standards hold the strings to your life. Um, so while we're busy fighting each other, they're just ruling over us, getting all of the prestige, the money, the power. But anyways, so growing up, I was taught that Black people are lesser. They are uncouth. They are, I don't know, everything derogatory that you can think of. My mother always taught me you were Dominican. That is who you are. You are not Black. You are not African American. You aren't anything like them. Um, and as such, you need to carry yourself as a Dominican person and as somebody who doesn't. She basically told me that I wouldn't be as oppressed as a Black person, and Black people deserve their oppression because of some reason. I have been giving so many fucking answers to that question, and all of them are bullshit. So I'm not even going to go into that. And so I was in New York when I was living there. I went to school there. There was everybody was there. There were so many cultures, so many different people that it didn't matter. That I knew very little of being Black and what that meant in society. It was never important because I was number one, I was a kid. And number two, if you wanted to just say that you're Dominican, nobody would say anything. Everybody else was like, yeah, I'm Jamaican, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm blah, 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 blah. It always was just where you're from, what your culture is. At least that's the way it was when I was in school there. I was in school in New York until um, fourth grade, and then I moved to California. I was in a Catholic school for all of that time. I went to Holy Child in Westbury, New York, which was a very upper middle class, I would say, neighborhood. My mother was a doctor. My grandmother was a retired teacher. And so that became a very, like, it was just a bubble. I lived in a bubble. I lived in an affluent bubble. And I moved to California. My mom bought a huge house for no other reason but prestige alone. Um, oh, you live in that big house, that mansion. You're a doctor. Wow. That kind of stuff. And then I started school. Where I lived in California, I lived in Southern California. I lived by San Bernardino. Between San Bernardino and Riverside, there's a small little city called Redlands, which is a shithole, um, full of mostly white people. Um, and my school was half white and half Mexican. So when I started school, I got a lot of, "What are you?" Um, There were also like I would say a small community of Black people there. Um, there weren't as much Black people as there were Mexicans and white people. Um, but I got a lot of "What are you?" And when I would say Dominican, that wasn't what is it? What's Dominican? Where's Dominica? What? Um, Nobody really knows anything but what they see on TV, which is mainly Mexicans because they're so close to the United States. So that is their standard for what Latinx people are, or what they look like, um, the food, blah blah, that's all what they see. Um, so since there wasn't a large Dominican or Puerto Rican community or anyone that was Black and also Hispanic, um, I got a lot of, you're not Mexican, you're not Hispanic, you're not with us, you're not us. Um, and I didn't speak Spanish, and I still don't speak Spanish. Um, and my mom didn't really want me to learn Spanish because my dad didn't really speak very good English. At least what my mom says, he didn't speak very good English. So she wanted to make sure that I never spoke Spanish. So just in case one day I actually met my dad, I wouldn't be able to communicate with him. Um, so I grew up with the food. I grew up with the music. I grew up with the culture. But because I didn't speak Spanish, I was missing that key part to, I don't know, prove my Hispanicness or the fact that I was Latino or whatever the fuck. So I got that from the Mexicans, and I got, you're not Black, you have a Hispanic last name. My last name is Encarnacion. My dead name is very Hispanic. Nobody could pronounce it. Um, so I got a lot of, you're not Black, you're whatever Hispanic you say that you are. Um, and that created a lot of resentment in me. Um, and I was bullied quite brutally by both the Mexicans and the Blacks in my school. Um, Throughout, I would say as soon as I got into California, that became the case. Um, I was, I don't know, bullied is not the word that I would use. I think bullying is such a thing that people kind of just like, oh, you were bullied, that's a rite of passage. At least that's the way it was when I was younger, because um, I remember a girl committed suicide because she was cyberbullied. Um, and after that, bullying became more of a serious deal. But before then, um, it was still, like that's what happens to everybody. Everybody gets bullied, blah blah blah. Um, and I honestly wouldn't say that what happened was bullying. I would consider it way more sinister than that, because there was a lot of abuse, sexual and physical and emotional. And it was very much overlooked by the school authorities. Um, they really didn't do anything. In fact, what they did, they made it worse. So, um, as I grew older, I had a lot of resentment towards Black people and towards Mexicans. Um, my grandmother is surprisingly, even though she's first generation, very anti-Mexican, and very anti-immigrant, which I've never really understood. Um, she always said that like I couldn't date any Black people. No Mexicans, definitely no Mexicans. My mom was more on the Black thing. Um, and that I could only date white people or Asians. Um, so that's who I dated for most of my life. Um, and so growing up with that, I was very, I could only hang out with white people. Basically, that was what happened. So because I was ostracized by the Black people and by the Mexicans, and I was being bullied by them, um, I gravitated towards the white people, because I used to be like, well, the reason why they don't bully me is because they know I'm not white, so um they don't need to put me in that box. They don't need to like quantify my whiteness because I'm not. And it could just be about friendship. But in order to hang out with the white people and be a part of that group, I had to forego Black people, forego all of my kinship with those groups, both Mexicans and Black people. I had to like basically, I don't know, disown them and disown myself and disown my own heritage and my morals and my respect for myself, in order to do somersaults and contortion myself to fit their standards. I became very whitewashed. Um, and when I was in high school, I started dating a Thai boy, which, I mean, I was dating him for reasons to please my mother. But he also was dealing with the model minority myth, um, of like, I'll hang out with white people and they will treat me well and they'll have only good standards, not standards, stereotypes about me. And they won't, I don't know, they won't treat me as other, but they did treat him as other. They were very racist to him. His last name was Chelacheap, and they would make very rude, very offensive comments about his last name, about the fact that he was Asian. They would use slurs, and he would just laugh it off like that was just all fun and games. Um, and so I followed his lead, and his friend Hanny was extremely racist. He was, I thought he was Mexican for like the longest time, but I think he's like Mediterranean or of some sort. And he was very racist. He would laugh and make jokes about how we were going to make the ugliest children, um, and that like Blasian babies were like very ugly, and I would constantly, every single time anyone would say that I was Black, I would be like, no, I'm not Black, I'm not like those people, I'm Hispanic, blah blah blah, and like that was never like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're Black. And I would just, I would be vehemently against that, against being put like being labeled that. Um and I started having a lot of mental health issues, in the second semester of freshman year. I broke up with the boy that I was dating, and I I made misfit friends because I was very goth, or I was seen at the emo scene at the time, because I was trying to be less emo because I was going, in middle school, I was very emo. I self-harmed. I wore only black. I was very visibly other, visibly other. And during that time, I had gotten into drugs and alcohol. But then when I got in high school, I went straight, and tried to be what my mom wanted me to be. And I'll get into why that was in a later video. But um, my mental health just really declined. It was already pretty bad, but I had gone through like a phase of like, I'm just gonna suck it up. I'm gonna pretend to be this other person. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm gonna adhere to my mom's wishes. I'm going to be preppy and feminine and girly and date the footballer and be popular and do and just focus on school, and all that. And then that just kind of went downhill. Um, and so I met other misfits. Um, my good friend Gerardo, who was Mexican, um, and Michael, a white boy. Um, and I became really good friends with them. They helped me out a lot with my mental health. They would take me to the nurse's office when I was having panic attacks in class. They really helped me out. Yeah. But as I got older and became closer with Michael, I went over to his house and I found out that his brother is a Nazi. Um, and his brother would make a lot of really fucking disgusting jokes, be very racist. He had a Confederate flag hanging in his bedroom, um, and Michael never said anything about it. He never defended me. He never ever um, just never defended me. He just never defended me. Um, and so I kind of just got used to it, and I just joked along, made jokes at myself, at black people, at Mexicans, at everybody really. Um, Michael had a good friend named Dante who was also black, and he was doing the same thing as I was. He was just going along with it. Um, he was just laughing along. And so I was like, this isn't, I guess this is just what we do. We just are supposed to laugh along with them. And I was drinking a lot during those times, smoking a lot of weed, um, and I met my ex-partner. Um, I met my ex-partner when I was 15. She's Mexican and white. She was raised by her white mother and her white mother's side of the family. She didn't really have anything to do with her dad, who was Mexican. Um, and so her family was racist light. Um, I as you go along with me, you'll realize that I totally agree with Soren on yes, all white people. Um, but for the sake of this video, I'll just call it racist light. They would make jokes on the side, but accept me and be nice to me. Um, and welcome me with open arms. Um, but that kind of really fueled that anti-blackness because I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be othered. I wanted to feel normal. Um and I don't know. So that also tied into that. And Arya, at the time, she identified as a cis boy. Um and that was just I really loved her. I really loved her. She really helped me out through a really hard time, and she actually became my FP. We dated for 6 years. FP means favorite person. It's a BPD thing, borderline personality disorder. I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, we became very close. We dated for 6 years. It was very serious, very um, teenager, but very serious nonetheless. Um, and we would make very racist jokes together. We would make very racist jokes. Um, we would. I remember a particular incident where we went to Prospect Park in Redlands, and she showed me a video about a popular nursery rhyme for kids, and how that one was actually based on a very racist song of the 1920s, I think, called Nigga Wanna Eat a Watermelon. Yeah, Nigga Wanna Eat a Watermelon. And I remember laughing the fuck, like, just laughing about that, and really just being disgusting. Just really being disgusting. And then as I got older, and made more Black friends and got more entrenched in social justice and Black issues, and really discovered my own identity outside of my mom and other people's ideas of what I should be, I realized who I am and that I am Black, and that this is my life. This is the life that I've been laughing at. The people that I've been laughing at are me. I've been laughing at myself. And people have been laughing at me, laughing at myself. Um, and there was a lot of just shame that came with that realization that I had lived my life hating myself, hating my dark skin, hating my curly hair, wanting to be more like typical Mexican Hispanic, like light skinned, curly-ish hair, straight-ish hair, um, that kind of, I don't know, general portrayal of Mexicans or really Hispanics that is in the media, because there's anti-Blackness is just so pervasive everywhere. So that's what you see. You see J-Lo, and you see Mark Anthony, and you see, I don't know, every other like light-skinned Hispanic. Um, and realizing that I'd spent the majority of my life hating myself and hating my community and wanting nothing to do with that, was just a huge blow, a huge blow. And it took a lot of time to accept that. When I turned 18, I decided to get out of this culture. I decided to go to Japan and live there for 6 months in group housing with other foreigners, and learn myself, really learn who I am and love myself. Um, I went there and did some soul searching and came back and realized that being Black is okay. Being Black is who I am. And I can't run from that. And I cannot not um be some fucking sounding board for racist ideology. Um and that I had been a cog in the system. And that is it's a huge thing to realize. Um and so I decided to, I don't know, really enmesh myself in helping other people like me, for helping the Black community, for building a community with everybody realizing that they have been programmed with anti-Blackness from a very young age. The society teaches anti-Blackness, and anti-Blackness is taught down through generations. This isn't just a me thing, this isn't just a you thing, this isn't just white people, it's all of us. Um, and only through really loving ourselves can we realize that we're enough, that we deserve better, that we don't deserve to be treated like this. Um, and a big wake up call came with the police brutality. Um, the police brutality and the Zimmerman case. I should say the Trayvon Martin case, because fuck Zimmerman. Um, and I really realized that this is gonna happen. Like, just because I say I'm Dominican, doesn't make anybody see me and say, oh, that's a Dominican person. They're not Black, because I am. So, like, nobody's gonna treat me better because I am Dominican. People don't even know that that's a thing. Like, They see black and they say black and they treat me black because I am. And in our society, that means that I am to be stepped on and that black people are to be stepped on. Um, and so I just wanted to talk about this and really just lay it all out on the table that, yeah, we all have to work against this. And that nobody, I mean, very few people are raised in a family or a community or a society where being black is not only acknowledged but loved. And I don't know, raised really to this to that we are as good as white people. Nobody's really taught that. It's all like you should be respectful towards white people because they have all the power, and you should try to be as close to white as possible. You shouldn't act like this or wear this or do this because it's considered black and disgusting and negative, blah blah, all the stuff that we attribute to black people, that society attributes to black people. um and like, it's okay to learn at any age. It's okay to learn. It's important to learn, because if you're not learning, then you're just being used. People see you as an ignorant person that they can use to prove their own points because you are their yes person. You are, and any other better term, like, you are the Ben Carson of white people. You do their bidding. You were the good black person, who lets them do whatever the fuck they want and joins in on it and then okays it for other people to do it as well. Um, and that's why it's important to learn at any age, not consider learning with shame or being ignorant. Because really all of us are ignorant. All of us are learning. I'm still learning, and I'll keep learning. Um, because the scariest thing is just accepting the way things are. Because then we never get anywhere. We've been talking about the same issues for hundreds of years. I mean, we haven't been, because we didn't have a voice for a very long time. And we have just been able to make our voices heard. But the police brutality has been going on since forever. Racism, forever. Sexism, forever. Transphobia, forever. And the only way that we'll be able to fix any of these issues is just to learn and keep learning. And never think that you're the smartest person in the room, because you never are. You never are. Nobody is going to be the authority on anything. It's a constant group think, a group effort to continuously unlearn all of the racism, unlearn the sexism, because I was there too. I was sexist for a very long time. Even when I was still identifying as, actually, I stopped being sexist when I came out as trans. There was a lot of trauma in that. But I became very sexist, very misogynistic. Um, I honestly, I I despised women. Um, I always wanted to be. I'm not like those girls. I don't gossip. I don't do all that stuff. I'm not interested. I'm not boy crazy. I'm not catty. I'm not malicious. I'm not dangerous. Um, all of that stuff. I was that. Um, And it took me a really long time to realize that no, abuse is not an excuse for being an asshole. Having PTSD or mental illness or any other disability, it doesn't give you a right to be an asshole. So that's really what I wanted to leave you with, is just an an insight into who I am and why I am the way that I am now, and who I was back then and how that has affected the way that I look at things. Because before I can talk about how I've gotten better and how smart and woke I am, it's important to know that I haven't always been this woke. That I was very bad and that I thought a lot of bad things. But it's a lot of these bad thoughts, a lot of this anti-blackness, sexism, transphobia, misogyny, all of this is rooted in white supremacy and the indoctrination of our society. We are all given these ideas and they are constantly reinforced. So it's none of our faults. This isn't our fault. It's not our fault that we were raised like this. It's not our fault that we were programmed like this. It was by design. And what's important to realize and always remember is that you have a choice. You can change. You can adapt. You can learn. You can unlearn. And you can become a better person and help overthrow this. So nobody else has to live like this. Anyway, that's what I wanted to leave you with. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.